P.J. O'Rourke, in 1970, you wrote for an underground newspaper in Baltimore called Harry, which, to quote your own words, was opposed to war and capitalism and wanted to replace these with loud music and drugs. He must have been a very different P.J. O'Rourke.
Well, he did a heck of a job. I seem to have replaced practically everything in my life back then with loud music and drugs. So it was a successful enterprise.
But what changed?
Oh, what changed? Oh, I got a job. You know,
Then there was the P.J. O'Rourke of National Lampoon, who later wrote, "Never get too many humourists in a room. We hated each other." What memories in particular does that conjure up?
Yes, the National Lampoon was, I don't know how many of your viewers will be familiar with this, but it was a sort of a mad magazine with filthy words in it, filthy words and girls naked from the waist up. So I would call it an adult mad magazine, but that would be going too far. We were mad, however, and I think it was a pretty funny enterprise back in the 70s. But having a bunch of humorists in an office is like having a bunch of cats in a sack. Most people, sort of enjoy going to work because of the socialization and a chance to flirt with coworkers and so on, but actually hate the job they do. The Lampoon was the exact opposite. We loved the job we did. We hated being around each other. For good reason, I would say, mostly.
And in your Rolling Stone phase, you wrote of the baby boomers after the stock market crash of 1987, "What went wrong? We were the generation of hope, the generation that was going to change the world." And you concluded by saying, "The truth is, we were spoiled rotten from the start."
And it's proving ever more true. And if you think it's bad now, wait till, we're just starting to retire now. Wait till we're about 75 or 80 and see just how greedy and selfish, and then we'll also be physically repulsive on top of it. Not that we aren't getting there as it is. We're a bad lot. You know, our parents went through a lot. Our parents went through the Depression. Our parents went through World War II. And when they got us, in the late 40s and the early 50s, they decided they'd make everything perfect for us. And this is try it with a dog. Try giving a dog everything it wants and see what kind of dog you get. Well, that's the kind of generation you got.
Do you still blame the baby boomers for this latest meltdown, or the generation that's followed?
I definitely blame the baby boomers for the current financial meltdown. We never were quite smart enough to do these derivatives and these credit swaps and collateralized debt obligations. But we taught the coming generation, the Generation X, we taught them well. We taught them to think of me first and other people later, and we taught them to be creatively greedy. We weren't satisfied with simply being spoiled brats. We had to turn the world on its ear in 1968. So they learned their lesson. They said, well, we can't just, go like people always have to the financial exchanges and try and grab all we can. Let's think up a way to wreck the entire world economy and then grab everything we can. They did us proud.
I just want to walk briefly down your memory lane of presidents, the ones you've lived through. Richard Nixon. Richard
Nixon was the best thing that ever happened to journalism. I mean, this guy was wonderful. Just when you thought he could get no worse, he got worse, The other day I was in a store here in town, and in rushed a camera crew from local television. And I said, "What's up?" And they said, there's a big propane tank across the street here, just sprung a leak. And I said, "Well, I guess this wouldn't be the time to step outside and have a smoke, would it?" And they said, "Oh, please do. We worship different gods." We worship different gods than you do, and that of course that's journalism in a nutshell. And
Nixon, that was Richard Nixon.
That was Richard Nixon, yeah.
Jimmy Carter?
Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter he remains to this day America's most ex of ex-presidents. You just can't believe that we elected this doofus. He was a bright enough guy and sort of well-meaning, but he was about as prepared to be president of the United States as your goofy old uncle, the one that memorizes baseball statistics. He just wasn't there.
Ronald Reagan.
Oh, fun. You know, he was he had a good sense of humor, and he could get his point across. And he was a good, strong, tough, underrated intellectually, smarter than he seemed to be, especially judging by things like his letters to his wife, which have been collected now, and his private writings and so on. The guy was no fool.
George Bush Sr.?
Lovely guy, sort of like the WASP, because it's a more dignified, waspy version of Jimmy Carter, you know, sort of bumbling around, you know, should have been the head of the Greens Committee at a really fancy country club.
Bill Clinton?
Yeah, you know, I'm sure you've got the type in Australia, a very recognizable American type, and I'm sure you have an equivalent. He's a carny barker, you know, I mean, just an absolute sleazeball, a brilliant sleazeball. I grew up in the car business. My family had a Buick dealership in Toledo, Ohio, and if we could have hired Bill, I wouldn't be talking to you on television. I'd be on my yacht in the Mediterranean. We would be so rich.
And of course, George W.
Yeah, George W. He's a strange one. I've never met him. I met his dad once or twice, and a very likable fellow. But I know a lot of people in Texas who know Bush quite well, and they like him personally, and they have more respect for him than I would have. But I'll tell you the thing that made me mad at Bush. It wasn't so much the policy mistakes, and there were plenty of them. He didn't feel that he had to explain himself to the American public. Now, damn it, it's a democracy. The job of the President of the United States is to talk to the public, is to explain to them. Now, some presidents talk too much, like Bill Clinton. Some presidents try to talk but don't know how, like George Bush Sr. But George W. Bush just didn't feel obligated to talk to Americans. I'm in charge. I'm running things. You guys just go to the mall, okay?
You're with me or against me?
Yeah, you're with me or against me. You go to the mall, when you come back, everything will be fixed in Iraq.
Barack Obama?
Well, early days. Too soon to tell. I mean, he's a little bit of a Harvard know-it-all, one of these people that, you know, they have a different kind of bull session at Harvard than at the kind of college I went to, you know. And instead of sitting up drinking beer and talking about girls, they redesign healthcare for America and the world. They talk about GATT tariffs and UN resolutions, and these guys have got it all figured out, you know. And you know, one great thing about not being so smart is that at least you know you don't have it all figured out. If you're as smart as Obama is, you're so smart that you may think that you have it all figured out. And you know, one thing you know when you get over 60 that guys Obama's age don't know yet is ain't nobody got it figured out.
On death, you wrote last September, after learning you had cancer of the backside, that you'd glimpsed death in the crowd rather than having to look him in the face. How was the experience?
Not so hot. I wouldn't recommend it as recreational activity. On the other hand, the drugs were good. I mean, I am a child of the 60s, and I appreciate good drugs. I just went in for the whole colonoscopy checkup just last week, and all they found up there was my vote for George W. Bush in 2004. So, so you know, I got let's see, day after tomorrow I go in, they run me through the CAT scan thing, and God knows, you know, I'll be 62 this year. They'll probably find something awful, but yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you know, medical miracles. I just wish I'd had a more dignified medical miracle. I had a medical miracle, yeah.
A very high-profile Australian businessman, the late Kerry Packer, once said after a heart attack that nearly killed him, "I've seen the other side, and believe me, there's nothing there." You don't agree with that, do you?
No, I don't. No, I've come around to my ancestral heritage and try to be a you know, reasonably good Catholic. One of the nice things about Christian theology is that none of us are good Christians. That's just taken as a given. And perhaps I take it a little too far, but I'm sure I'm really lousy at it. But I think, you know, one of the advantages of the line of work that I was in for almost 20 years was that I've been shot at. You know, I've been kissed before. There have been various times I thought that I was not going to get out of someplace. And I remember one time specifically, and I kept telling myself about this when I got diagnosed with cancer. I'm sitting on a plane on the runway in Beirut. It was my first foray as a foreign correspondent. I've been scared to death. I've been in Beirut for 3 weeks, or been in Lebanon for about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and I was finally getting out of there. And we're sitting on the tarmac in the Beirut airport, And the pilot comes on and he says, we can't take off because of mortar fire. And we're sitting there in a tin can full of kerosene, you know, and their mortar rounds are landing around us and we can't go down the runway because of that. And I thought, we're dead. We're just dead. And I thought, well, what kind of bargain can I make with God? And I said, well, you know, people are always making bargains with God. You know, if I live through this, you know, I'll give all my money to the poor. And I thought, I'm not going to do that, you know. So let's not make any promises we won't keep. I said, okay, God, if I get through this, I will never, ever get upset about being over my Visa credit card limit again. And you know, I never have been. I kept my side of that bargain.
So no change of priorities in your life. I guess this brush with death could be God giving you one last chance to become a Democrat.
I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. You know my theory of long standing, that God's a Republican, Santa Claus is a Democrat.
PJ O'Rourke, thanks very much for talking with us.
You're very welcome.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.